history of Freemasonry in Washington, D.C. Out of everywhere in the United States, I've got to say that is one of the places that captivates my mind the most in regards to Masonry.
The quest for the truth behind the most powerful secret society in the world begins here in Washington. A city built by Freemasons for Freemasons, with Masonic secrets and codes embedded in every iconic structure.
One of the major traditions in Masonry is the expression hidden in plain sight. If you really know what to look for in Washington, the Masonic tradition is there to see.
From the Washington Monument to the Capitol building to the secret foundation stones of the city itself, Washington, D.C. is said to contain Masonic codes known only to the initiated.
What's fascinating there is the information is being conveyed in many ways other than words, other than text, through an array of symbolic illustrations, paintings that had specific meaning.
Before one can interpret and understand the codes, one needs to understand the origins of the organization that put them there. The Freemasons are an organization with an enigmatic past, a shadowy membership, and mysterious goals.
It is not a social club. It is not a civic club. Definitely it's not a religious organization. And it's not a charity.
The mystery surrounding the Freemasons originates from the levels of secrecy associated with it throughout history. Few other organizations require blindfolded initiations, blood oaths, or codes and symbols for identification. This reenactment shows details of the initiation of a Master Mason. In the first stage of initiation, the newcomer is blindfolded. His clothes stripped away. He then swears never to reveal the Masonic secrets. In the final stage, the Master reenacts a death and resurrection ritual, with the initiate himself as the stand-in human sacrifice.
The initiation is an esoteric process that conveys, through the language of symbolism, powerful concepts and presents the individual with tools that he would use in order to improve himself.
With the initiation now complete,
Top 5 secret symbols hidden in the map of Washington, D.C. 1. The White House sits at the apex of an inverted pentagram formed by its nearby streets and intersections. 2. Rick Campbell from DCSymbols.com shows how this much more complicated shape fits over the monuments as well. It's a pentagram within a cube within a pyramid, which can also be seen as a flower of life diagram. 3. If we think of the pyramid in this diagram as relating to the unfinished pyramid on the dollar bill, which is capped by the all-seeing eye of Providence, its pupil lines up with the headquarters of Scottish Freemasonry, also known as the House of the Temple. 4. A hexagram can also be drawn over DC in units of 1 royal mile, with the Jefferson Memorial, White House, and the Temple on its central nodes. These measurements directly link DC to the New Jerusalem described in the Bible. And 5. A tree of life diagram also fits well over various traffic circles and points across the DC map. Specifically, the curving shape of the streets in Scott Circle matches the shape of the Pythagorean Y, which is in the location of the hidden doth in the Tree of Life.
Practically everything that we expose here on RSE had its place on the bookshelf of this Freemasonic library.
D.C. is a Masonic city. It's laid out by a Masonic cult. Every building is laid with its foundation stone by Freemasons. It was laid out as a Sephirotic tree of life in the Jewish Kabbalah, or as a Masonic coffin. Freemasonry is Judaism for the Gentiles.
Washington, D.C., as seen by Worldview 2, 480 miles above the Earth. From ground level, there's nothing unusual about the Capitol's street layout, except perhaps the frequent occurrence of circles, like Logan and DuPont, and diagonal roads, like Pennsylvania Avenue, cutting across an otherwise rectangular street grid. But glimpsed from above, curious patterns begin to appear.
Washington is laid out in geometric patterns. You can discern squares and triangles.
Many modern cities are laid out according to a pattern. But mostly that pattern will be made up of rectangular blocks with roads running at 90-degree angles. When a pattern does deviate, it's normally to accommodate some kink or feature in the landscape.
This is the headquarters of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Notice how it also has 33 pillars, all 33 feet high. Also notice how the address has 33 in it. It's been around.
So what is it, and where does it lead? First, the Masonic compass. This points to the White House. The White House is the base point on the pentagram. But that's not all. The White House also sits at the base of another key Masonic symbol, the unfinished pyramid. The unfinished pyramid is the symbol depicted on the dollar bill, with the so-called all-seeing eye at the top. Back in D.C., remarkably, the street outline does something similar. Travel directly north from the White House, up the pyramid, to the center of the all-seeing eye, and there can be found a building. It is indeed a temple in the form of an unfinished pyramid. This is the temple of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree Freemasonry.
Hello, Jim Cole here, Sovereign Grand Commander for the Southern Jurisdiction. I want to welcome you to...
Hey TikTok. So we're going to be going over aerial architecture of Washington, D.C. in this particular video. And those who aren't familiar with the aerial view of Washington, D.C. as well as the ground level of Washington, D.C., there is obvious occultic secret symbolism all over the place. As in this image here, we can see the Capitol building being at the center of what looks to be like the exact representation of the Freemasonic owl. It may seem like a stretch at first glance that something like that owl could be so perfectly in plain sight from an aerial perspective, but if anyone who has been to Washington, D.C. or has looked at their own, through their own research on the internet of these images, it becomes quite apparent of how obvious these symbols are, such as pentagrams, stars, triangles, and square and compasses, all pointing back to a Freemasonic upbringing of Washington, D.C. itself. The Pentagon stands as another testament of aerial architecture and deep thought being put into the aerial architecture as well as the geometrical architecture itself, with it being on September 11th that it first started its construction, and September 11th was the date it was actually hit in 2001. As well as previous in this particular video, and through independent research you can do yourself, it's not hard to understand that the Scottish Rite would be centered at the top of all of this overhead architecture from the aerial perspective, and it playing, you know, a major role in the entire layout of what you're seeing visually. Other symbols such as the phallic Washington Monument, which is shown throughout several different areas of the world, is also more evidence. With such immaculate detail to these structures, statues, and monuments, etc., and the Scottish Rite being literally the pinnacle of what you would be seeing on this architectural layout, it most definitely begs the question of any truther out there of how much manipulation the Freemasons have in our realm.
The secret architecture of your nation's capital. You see the cross, you see the square and compass, you see the owl at the top. Right, it's like the first plan, Lafont, Pierre Lafont. Right, L'Enfant. Right, so Pierre Lafont was a Freemason. Right, George Washington picked some Benjamin Banneker. I'll say that for the next video. We're gonna stick with Lafont for right now. This was his sacred design for the city. It's the early, off the bat, Riddles and Stone, the secret architecture of Washington, D.C. So they telling you that it's, you know, symbolisms and geometry built into the, you know, Freemasonship, built into the roads and the map itself. See Lincoln Square, the Capitol, District Court, City Hall, Supreme Court, White House. They went through with this shit. A lot of people don't like driving in D.C. because of the way the streets laid out, right? It's in numerical order, it's in alphabetical order. America's secret destiny, right? Spiritual visions and the foundation of a nation. Look who at the bottom, looking stupid, right? While the white boys in wigs on some Egyptian shit, because that Freemason shit is based off Egypt. But this is let you know how DC is. They got condos you can live in right in your face, Masonic Temple condos. Right, so let's get into the layout. The White House, the Jefferson Memorial, the Pentagon. You see the little triangles and stars, right? Cracking the code. Dan Brown sequel to the Da Vinci Code set in Washington involves city's rich, mysterious ties to Freemasonry. Here's a guide to Masonic Washington. They got a picture of the Scott, right? You got the obelisk, you got the triangle. You see the capstone at the top, right? Masonic and occult symbolism of Washington, D.C. You see the little picture with like the man with his hands raised with the horns. Right? This is regular Google. They telling you straight up occult and Masonic symbolism, straight up. The dog star. A lot of people don't know it's a dog. It's a dog head, the dog star, right? So you got your little man with the one eye, right? With the square and compass in the chest, the horns at the top. This is real deal how the streets is laid out. This not drawings on a piece of paper. This really shapes within the city. You see it say Washington, D.C., the New Jerusalem, right? With the Hebrew star, though. Sacred geometry of Washington, D.C., the Tree of Life, Kabbalah, the chakras. A lot of people don't know the Tree of Life built into the city. You see what I'm saying? What part of the city you live in? Where that go-go bumping at? What part of the chakra you live in? Right? You see another sacred geometry, DC decoded. DC decoded, right? But look at all the shapes they playing with. Bring you back to the original with the circles, right? You take the dog out, you got more of a square and compass with the G in the middle. That's the I think that's the White House in the middle. If we lay out the Tree of Life on top of a map of DC, then we'll find that many of the points correspond with major landmarks throughout the city. I swear this got to be the most Masonic city. Probably top 2 maybe number one. I was gonna say number one. But they got the chakra chart laid out in the damn streets. People die in these streets. It's people poor in these streets. It's rich, elite. It's all kind of debauchery happening in this town, right? I'm sitting right here, the Jefferson Monument. Malkuth, otherwise known as the Kingdom. This is the lowest level. Watch the monument, Yesod. It's like God in Hebrew. Also known as the Foundation, the White House. Tibereth, otherwise known as Beauty. Human soul, the apex tree of the pyramid, known as the Father or the Supreme Crown, also correspond with the Hindu chakra crown. This is known as the highest level, the apex, represents the source, center of creation, or 0 point. And there's nothing on the map of any significance at this location. Right, okay? So you see all these levels of motherfucking factions and branch offs, right? Of the whole, this is everybody, right? The OTO, the CFR, right? Now it's Washington D.C. It's based off George Washington. He was a cold-blooded Scottish Rite. The picture tells 1,000 words. He was cold. He was knee deep. So the whole pretty much United States jumped off on Freemasonry from the door, from the jump, the first stone laid. Your first president and there's other presidents that's in the museum. I don't remember, that's Truman or one of them little Eisenhower, one of them little goofies. But they was with the aprons. You know, most women wear aprons in the kitchen. We ain't gonna get into it though. These the ones we can confirm. These just the ones we can stamp. Read the list. Pick your favorite president. Whole time he probably was, in his back door played with. All the way down to your Declaration of Independence. Them peoples wrote your rights. You don't think they was slick enough you think they cared about you and really wrote the most secret organization, the Illuminati itself. You think they wrote a Declaration of Rights and Independence and bills and constitutions for you? He dressed in the whole get-up when he signed it, when they set it up. So this the flag, DC flag. I don't know if y'all ever seen this DC flag. Basic, simple, but it's a deeper meaning behind it. Them 3 stars represent the 3 cities that run the world. London, DC, and the Vatican. Right? So they all got the obelisk with the circle around it. That's a sex symbol. It's Egyptian, right? It's a phallus. Okay, now this is the breakdown of the cities. One is the financial power, London. DC is the military branch. Vatican City is the spiritual power. All of them got the obelisk. One world power system, right? You see the capital in every place got the same. But see, look at the shape of DC. DC itself is in the shape of the square and compass, right? You almost could say look at the bottom half. It's like a pyramid with the capstone missing. As above, so below, right? So you got the pagan Egyptian obelisks. A lot of people don't know them Egyptians started the mystery school. It's the pyramids is built there. You don't think Freemasonry, stone and mortar, brick masonry, pyramids, City of London, Vatican City, not any part of Italy, not a part of England, DC, not a part of America. These 3 states control the world, right? It's not a part of America. It's not a part of Italy. It's not a part of England. Understand what you're looking at. You got the Pope, you got the Queen, you got Uncle Sam, right? Military, finance, and religion. Some say that Uncle Sam supposed to be Baphomet, supposed to be the goat. They used to show old Sam with the long chin head, the old goat. You see the star on his hat, the top hat is Masonic, right? You got to know what you're looking at. The Pope hat, the 3 city states of evil, money, media, military, DC, courts, banks control the Freemasons, right? And what we got over here, the Jesuit gang, religion, minds, and the Jesuits themselves. So these are all what they control, right? New Rome. So if you ever been to DC, a lot of the architecture look like Olympia, pillars and you know. But this to wrap it up for you. You got the Vatican at the top. You got the city of London. You got DC. War on terror for DC. Zionist government. Read the pyramid. Jesuits, Illuminati, Knights Templar, Knights of Malta, 32nd degree. Right? Organized religion, secret military, secret service, police, mafia, blah, blah, blah. Let's take it deeper.
The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia,
Stick it in deeper.
spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the First Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked War of Independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution. 1 century later, a corrupt U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed, or Federal Reserve, is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words "In God We Trust." Who exactly is the God they trust? They also collect American taxpayers' money through the IRS. Then they loan it back again with interest to pay for roads, bridges, and other public works. Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the president is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the president is president of the corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Since the United States is a corporation, who owns the corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen, and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another crown colony. Crown colonies are controlled by the empire of 3 city-states. At the center of each city-state is a towering, phallic-shaped stone monument called an obelisk that points skyward. In D.C. city-state, the obelisk, known as the Washington Monument, was dedicated to Freemason George Washington by the Freemason Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. The secretive Brotherhood of Freemasons laid the Washington obelisk's cornerstone in 1848 and contributed 22 Masonic memorial stones. 250 Masonic lodges financed the Washington Monument obelisk, including the Knights Templar Masonic Order. At the heart of London city-state is a 187-ton, 69-foot-tall Egyptian obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle. It was transported from Egypt and erected on the banks of the River Thames. In Vatican City, another Egyptian obelisk towers high above St. Peter's Square. What exactly is an obelisk? Obelisks are phallic-shaped monuments honoring the pagan sun god of ancient Egypt called Amun-Ra. The spirit of this pagan god is said to reside within the obelisk. Obelisks symbolize the phallus and fertility. At the base of the obelisk is a sunwheel circle symbolizing the vagina. Together, they depict male and female sexual union. Worshippers of Amun believe Amun is the supreme god and creator of all things, and can transform himself into other gods, like Osiris, the god of the underworld, or Seth, the god of evil and chaos. Since vowels were interchangeable in the biblical Hebrew language, Amun can be spelled A-M-E-N, A-M-O-N, O-M-O-N, or A-M-U-N. Today, Amun is one of the most popularly used words in the entire world. It is used in all languages by Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Jews at the end of prayer. Without realizing it, people all over the world are praising Amun. The Old Testament of the Bible is the holy book of both Christians and Jews. Amun is repeated over and over again throughout the Bible and is hidden within the word testament. The word Amun literally means the hidden one. Many are fooled into believing that Amun means so be it or truly, but in Kings 1 verse 36 of the Old Testament, Amun is identified as the Lord God of my Lord. Why in the world would the Vatican, a fortress of Puritan Christian values, erect a monument symbolizing the pagan god Amun and sexual intercourse right in its own front yard?